Hi everyone, may peace be on you all, and welcome to another episode of I'm a Muslim and That's Okay, and welcome to another segment of The Gift of the Gab, where I have some of the most interesting conversations, and because those are the conversations that I like having. And today with me is my very special guest, all the way from New Zealand. I mean, I say it all the way, even though she hasn't gone anywhere. But please welcome Helen King, a fellow podcaster, and she hosts the podcast, actually multiple podcasts, but I'm going to just focus on one for today. It's The C Word. How are you, Helen?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for being with us and agreeing to have this Gift of the Gab conversation with me. Before I get into anything else, please give a brief introduction about yourself. And sorry, I should have gone into this before, but the reason why I had Helen over is because not just because she's a podcaster, which is, it's amazing. But her podcast focuses on cancer. That is the C word she focuses on, because Helen is a cancer survivor. And with that preface, I'm going to hand it over to you, Helen. Please tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so The C Word is my podcast, and I started last year, probably like so many people during lockdown here in New Zealand. So I had cancer, I had breast cancer in 2018, and it was a very full-on experience.
Wow.
And so I started my podcast just as a way, I think, to talk to people about how cancer impacts you, and to have, I guess, more authentic and real conversations about cancer. Yeah,
and that's the thing. That's where I sort of came into this. Your podcast, amongst other podcasts about cancer, are such important narratives, because even now, we're in 2021, and we should be more aware and I think able to have conversations about cancer. But people are so uncomfortable with this. Why is that, Helen? Why are people so uncomfortable with cancer? You have to tell me.
I think because cancer forces us to think about our own mortality. And so for most people, when you mention cancer or the C word, they're instantly going to associate that with death, because the thing is that cancer does kill some people. It is a nasty disease that, and we don't all survive it. So I think one of the discomforts is that it forces that person to really consider their own mortality, and they also don't want to have to sort of think about that person being, I guess, threatened by this disease.
But here's the thing, Helen. In my experience, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the people who are closest to cancer patients, they are more accepting of the disease than somebody who's just a random stranger. That's what I think. It sort of boggles me that somebody who, if you told them that you are a cancer survivor, they become instantly so uncomfortable with this that they don't want to speak to you about it. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's really interesting, because I would say the opposite's true.
Really?
I would say that...
You have to tell us, yes.
Yeah. I think that people who are close to an individual who is going through cancer treatment or is being diagnosed by cancer, it's often a very confronting thing to be going through. Right. And I know my experience was that you sometimes find yourself actually having to, I guess, almost counsel somebody else about what's going on, or sort of managing other people's emotions, because it is such a confronting thing, because a lot of people experience when they're going through cancer losing friends because people don't know how to cope with it. They don't know what to do. They don't know what to say, and they just sort of disappear, and then they may reappear when you get better. And then the strangest people, like people that you went to school with 20 years ago, will be amazingly supportive. It's a really interesting experience. Yeah.
But that's the thing, Helen. And from your experience, how does a person who's going through a condition, and I think if you could clarify for those who are listening and viewing this, do you view cancer as a disease or a condition? I think most people don't understand the difference between the two. So if you could clarify that, how would you define cancer?
I would say it's a disease. Okay. I would say for some people it becomes a chronic illness. Yeah.
Right. So when a person is suffering from cancer, when they have this disease, they're going through so much themselves. Why do they have to handle other people's emotions as well? I think that when you said that, it just broke my heart. that literally, because please, if you could tell my audience some of the things that you have been through with cancer, to give a more, I think, rounded perspective, because I think when people think about cancer, it's like, oh, they have cancer, they will go to chemotherapy. The most they know is that you lose hair, you seem sick, but I don't think that is the totality of it. So please, could you tell us some of your experience if you're comfortable with it?
Yeah. I feel like the main thing people need to understand about cancer, and just also being aware that cancer is actually such a varied disease, it's an umbrella term really for multiple diseases. So I had breast cancer, and I had HER2 positive breast cancer. So when they test your tumors, they test for different things. Usually they look for, were you estrogen positive, progesterone, or HER2 positive, and I was only HER2 positive. So my cancer is probably different even from someone else who had, other types of breast cancer. And so what I think that one of the most important things for people to realize is that we do experience different things, but your cancer or having cancer does not leave you once treatment is finished. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people that I've spoken to, and it was certainly my experience, is that you go through this really intense time of, your diagnosis, your treatment. And, for me, that was all up 18 months. And your whole life is consumed by this. And then you kind of get spat out to the other end of the medical system. Oh my gosh. And you have to, you're trying to put yourself back together again. And people go, oh, you're better now, right? You've been fixed. It's gone away, hasn't it?
Oh my gosh.
So it's I think it's quite hard for people to kind of understand that the impact of having a cancer diagnosis is often lifelong.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, Helen. You're the one going through this. I think what gets to me the most is that we're bystanders in all of this. But the person who's going through the cancer is the person who is actually going through this. If I could ask you, like, in terms of these relationships, what was the most hurtful thing that you found out after you got diagnosed, in terms of the kind of relationships that sort of emerged?
Yeah, I mean, I lost friends. Like, I have a group of people that had been part of my life for quite a long time that I just don't have a relationship with anymore. And then other people who really, I guess, stepped up at the time and really supported me. I definitely have kept those friendships, and they're probably a lot closer.
Right.
So I guess, it was just people who, I don't know whether they just couldn't cope with having a friend that had cancer, or
Right.
then afterwards found it hard that, you then have this really long recovery process.
Right.
But people just sort of drop away.
Right.
And it's, that's the only way I can really describe it, is that, having people that may have been quite close to you,
right.
All of a sudden just, they stop texting, they stop calling, they stop inviting you out,
right.
And all of those things. And that, again, is actually a very common experience for people who've gone through cancer, or people and their loved ones.
And what is one of the most, when people find out that you have cancer, it could be anybody, what is the most common reaction they have to this, not information, but the fact that you've gone through cancer? What is the most common thing that you have to encounter? And what's the funniest thing you've ever had somebody tell you because of it?
Oh. You get a different thing. So most people are really shocked. Right. I was 37, and so,
right.
I was young to have a cancer diagnosis.
Right.
Most people would be over 55, 65 to get a cancer diagnosis. And so shock really is the most common thing. Or just, they can't believe it. They're really upset. I think the worst thing you can do to someone who's just told you that you have cancer is to tell them about your aunt, uncle, neighbor, colleague who has also had cancer and either died from that.
Oh my gosh, that's terrible.
Or say, oh, my friend had stage 4 lymphoma and they were fine. And you think, well, that's fantastic, but I don't have lymphoma. It's a totally different cancer. And so you get those people.
Right. That's the thing, as you'd mentioned before, because cancer is not all the same thing. I think people do make that mistake that it's one thing, but it's not. It's so many different diseases, as you had mentioned before. And what advice have you ever gotten? Like, you must have gotten some advice about cancer that makes no sense.
I can imagine it's kind of like, I've never been pregnant, but I imagine this is, people who've had children can probably relate to this, where you just get everything you get. You shouldn't eat sugar, you should do a juice cleanse, you should do this diet, you should do this, you should do that. And you get inundated with some of it is really well-meaning, people who really want to help, and then some of it is just like, and so you get all of that sort of stuff that I just imagine that, if you're pregnant, you would probably get the same thing. But you get all sorts of really weird advice.
You mean kale doesn't cure cancer, Helen?
It doesn't. No. It really doesn't.
Oh my gosh. But I can so see that happening. Now, you have gone through breast cancer. Did you have a mastectomy?
Yes, I had a full right-sided mastectomy, and I had a lot of lymph nodes removed.
Wow.
So I haven't had any reconstruction. So I usually wear a breast prosthesis.
Right.
Yeah, so I am one boobed now.
And what I want to ask is, and this is one of those things, I think people, especially with breast cancer, I think a lot of people in general, but women specifically, they do grieve this. Did you grieve this, that you had to go through a mastectomy? Because the reason I asked this, because it's very, I guess, I don't know, it's not like even from recent times, but a lot of women associated being a woman with having breasts, even though that's not how that works. So that's why I wanted to ask, did you grieve this?
I don't know that I grieved my breast per se. It was pretty confronting to not have one. That was quite difficult. I think the grief is around the life that you had. So it's things like, for me, like my whole body shape changed. I could no longer wear the clothes that I had worn before. I couldn't wear a bra with a prosthesis in it for a really long time because I had a lot of trouble with one of the wounds from where I had a drain, because you have drains after you have a mastectomy. And so I had to just sort of get used to only, to being in public and only wearing one, and only having one breast. And so I think the grief is around, you lose yourself, you lose the person you were, and that never comes back. And so it's kind of like having to accept a new body and just a new way of being, like your new normal, whatever that is. And that to me is the grief. It's not so much the breast. I'm kind of used to that now, but yeah.
And if you had some advice for somebody, because there would be people listening who are going through the same thing that you have already been through, that how do you heal from that? Because it's a very hard thing for somebody like me that, we take a lot of things for granted. But to be suddenly thrust into that, how do you sort of bring yourself to the point where you say it's okay?
It is really hard because society expects you just to be better and to get fixed. And I think I would imagine sort of parts of American culture are probably like this too, where you should not show emotion, like outward displays of emotion and grief and things are not okay. And I think that part of the discomfort with other people when you talk about cancer is that they can't quite get their head around that. Oh, that was 3 years ago. Why aren't you better now? And so my advice to anyone is to find people who are in the cancer community and are going through the same thing and talk about it there, because they will understand. Other people don't understand this. They don't get that. You don't suddenly become better once you stop chemo and your hair grows back and things. It's a process. It is a process of grieving. And I think, I really struggled in the first sort of, 9 months after everything ended, because I just didn't know what to do with myself. And what has helped is talking about it with people who understand, because they will take that and honor it and treat it as sacredly as it needs to, rather than some of that toxic positivity where people will say, it'll be okay, but because it's actually okay not to be. It's okay to grieve your old life and to be angry that this happened. I don't think that means that we're dwelling. I think that to heal, we need to expose the uncomfortable stuff and acknowledge that it's there.
What is one advice you would give to anybody who, like me, regular, average Joe, Joanne, whatever you want to, however you want to put it, when they are having a conversation with somebody who has cancer? Like, what is it they should not do? Or what is it that they should do?
I think, I can never remember what this is called, but there is a diagram for people who are going through hard things, whether it's like a loss of a parent or a divorce or cancer. And so that person is in the middle. And then the next layer out is their immediate family or loved ones, partners, that sort of thing. And then the circle out from there may be their friends, and then so on. And the idea behind this circle is that the person in the middle can talk, give out their emotion as such. But people can't give into it, if that makes sense. And so what I suggest is that if you're really upset about your friend's cancer diagnosis, you can say to them, hey, look, that's really bad, or yes, I swear too much, but I'm really sorry to hear that. That's,
right.
If you feel bad about it.
Right.
But then if you to take that emotion and then talk to maybe your partner and tell them how upset you are.
Right.
And if you need to cry, maybe. So that's the idea of that circle, is that you're not feeding in emotion to someone,
to the
who
person
can't
who
take
is already going through so much.
Yeah, and so then their family members probably need support and so on. So, and I think that actually the things that are the best thing to do for someone who's had cancer, having cancer, or maybe had the death of a loved one, anything, is to do really practical things. So if they have children, offer to take their children out for an afternoon, babysit for them, offer to do their cleaning for them, offer to send them a meal every Monday night. Often it's actually those really practical things that can help, because when you are in it, when you have just been diagnosed or you're going through treatment, you're often so focused on surviving. You can't cope with those interactions. Yeah, but I think some of the best things people did for me, so I had some really, some close friends who, when I felt okay, they'd come and pick me up and take me for coffee.
Oh, that's nice.
And that was really nice. And so it was a really normal sort of thing to do. So those are the things that I recommend. I think that it can be really, people say, oh, let me know what I can do to help. And they're never going to do anything.
That's not going to happen. It doesn't.
So just offer something practical. Hey, I'd really like you to send you a meal. Hey, I'd really like to do your housework for you. Yeah.
Right. And is your cancer in remission, Helen?
I think so. I guess so.
No, I mean, the only reason I asked that is that, as you had said, and this is the hard part about this, that is not something that people like thinking about, that it is something that you do have. It's your reality now. It is your reality that you do have to keep going back and keep checking. The thing, and I know you, and I hope you or anybody else who's going through cancer never have to experience this, but let's be realistic about this. There are people who are terminal with cancer, for whom suddenly it comes back with a vengeance, and ultimately it will take their life.
Yes.
For them and for the people around them, do you have advice for the people around them that this person is legitimately dying? What is the kindest, best thing that you can do for them?
I think it goes back to, and I'm sure this has a proper name, is that circle. It's thinking, how can I support this person, whether it is that practical stuff, because I know that people with metastatic cancer often can feel like people just sort of disappear, and especially for their loved ones, the caregivers, people often forget how hard it is for them because they're in the thick of it. So I think that offering practical stuff is the best thing to do in those situations, especially if they do have children or they have a partner. That the biggest stress will be on them. Or just spend time with them, because I know that for a lot of people who are facing terminal cancer, they do really focus in on, I just want to make memories. So maybe you want to make a memory with them. Maybe you want to, so I would think about it in that way, and don't be scared about talking about death, because this is the thing, is it is going to happen. That's the thing. Yeah.
That's what I wanted to ask you. How do we convince people to talk about death? Because nobody wants to talk about it. It doesn't matter what it is. Nobody wants to talk about it. How do you convince people to talk about death, especially when it comes to people, cancer patients who are terminal? Because the perception is, the person knows they're dying, they don't want to talk about death. But is that true?
Yeah. No, it's not at all. And I would ask, it would be that simple thing of, hey, do you want to talk about this? And hold space for them. And what I mean for that is you do not need to fix this for them. You don't need to offer advice. You don't need, you just let them say, I'm really frightened, or actually I feel okay. It's that we don't need to fix people who have terminal cancer. Is that you just ask, just say to them, do you want to talk about the fact that this is terminal? And if they say no, talk about something else. Talk about, I don't know, cats or something. Right. Yeah.
Now, I think, I mean, that's the thing. That is why I wanted to talk to you, Helen, because even now we are so uncomfortable with cancer. Even though it's, I mean, I wish I had more statistics with me. It is not as uncommon as people think. But we still don't know how to navigate this.
No.
And that's what I want you to tell us, like us, even those who are cancer patients who may be listening, how do they navigate this? How do they, I think that's the other thing I want to ask you. How do you navigate the loss of people you were once thought were friends? That, I mean, I can't even imagine. Like, how does somebody who's going through a very scary situation navigate something like this?
It is really challenging, for sure. And I mean, I think the thing that I live with every day is a fear of reoccurrence, because I had a very aggressive cancer and it was in my lymph nodes. And so the profile wasn't great, you know. And so you are constantly navigating the fear of reoccurrence, the loss of your old life, you know, all of these things. And I think the main advice is that you have to find somewhere to talk about it that feels safe, and that is often with other people who have been through it. In fact, that's the only space I found. And you have to allow yourself to grieve. I am someone who likes things to happen really quickly. I want to be better now. I want to be fixed now. And so I pushed myself a lot in that first year. And then what I realized is that, unfortunately, what I was going to need was time and to allow myself to grieve what had happened, and to allow myself to get to a point of acceptance that this is this thing happened, and it was actually really unpleasant, and it had a huge impact on my life. And I think when we allow ourselves time and space to grieve and heal, I think that's the best thing we can do for ourselves.
Now, if you had to like, what do you see, even like within, when you've had conversations with other cancer patients, other cancer survivors, what do you see as the point of hope for all the people that you've talked with, and what you yourself have experienced, in terms of the things that are what you have now versus what you could have had before?
Yeah, that's really tough. That's a really tough question, because there's no denying that cancer takes stuff away from you. And I know that I was actually thinking about this because, you know, my podcast has been a fantastic thing to come out of cancer. And sometimes I've joked, like, oh, you know, almost worth getting cancer because I love what I do, and I love connecting with people. But if I could turn it back and never have got cancer, I would quite happily have never had cancer. Like, it's not something, for me personally, I don't say, oh, cancer was this amazing gift and now I've learned all these things. That's just me. Some people do. Some people, I have met people who took it as this experience to totally reinvent themselves, and I admire people like that, but I'm not that person. And so I guess you don't have to take anything from it. You can just see it as this really awful thing that happened that you just want to sort of move away from. For me,
And that's the thing. I think most people need to understand this. This comes from this whole toxic positivity culture. And again, it's not to slam anybody who says that cancer brought something good into their life. That's not it. I literally am in no position to say anything of the sort, but I do think people have this thing, that this so-and-so person went through it and they came out so much brighter on the other side. But it can't be that way for everybody, because cancer takes a toll on every aspect of your life.
Yeah.
And you have the right to say that this was awful, and I would not want it to happen to me. If you ask me, like, if I could turn back time and have it not happen to me, I don't want it happening to me. It's fine. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's how I feel, because I think that it's so easy to sort of say, it's this thing that I've had to learn. And I think, no, it's not. In fact, if I hadn't have got cancer, my life would have just carried on down whatever path that was.
Right.
And it's really difficult because at the moment we are going through IVF because I hadn't had children.
Right.
And so to me, that's another thing of, I'm a 40-year-old woman trying to have a child because we can't do it naturally, because I think that the chemo zapped my ovaries. And so if we don't have children, it's because of the cancer.
Right.
And I know that there could be miracles and we could think positively and all of those things.
But that's the thing. That's what people miss this. They don't understand that the overall impact of it is so consuming. It was not just breast cancer that you had, Helen. No. It was something that took over, that still has control over so much of your life. And that's what people fail to understand. And,
they really do. And
Yes, go ahead, please.
I was just thinking it really is, because I'm sitting here and I'm thinking I still get a lot of pain, and you're sort of like, you're always aware, it's always there. You can't just forget about it, because I see my scar every day. I have lymphedema in my right arm. I have these pains, and and so you can't just sort of go, I'm having a day where cancer doesn't pop into my head, because it is always there and you are always aware of the impact. Yeah.
Right. No amount of inspirational quotes is going to fix that, Helen.
No.
No, but I want to thank you, Helen, for really having this conversation with me, because I've been wanting to again, cancer is something that impacts all of us, either personally or through someone we love. My father went through colon cancer, and I know that it is something, not just for the person who is going through it, but my mother was his primary caregiver. And again, it had a huge impact on her life too, because everything gets turned on its head. Who was the one that was with you by your side, Helen, when you were going through this?
Yeah, so I lived by myself at the time, which I think was probably quite
wow. Oh my God, Helen.
So I have a partner, and we actually had been together for about 6 months before I was diagnosed. So he was there for all of it.
Right.
And my mum really, she took me to everything.
Oh, wow.
Chemo and radiation. Oh, no, I took myself to radiation.
Oh, wow. You're brave, Helen. You're brave. Oh, wow.
I find it so funny now, because I think that's so ridiculous, because in my head I'm going, well, I have to drive there every day and it's in rush hour traffic, so I can just do it. I think those bonkers. Drive yourself to radiation every day.
Wow. But it's a testament to you, Helen, if you can do that. I mean, here they are, like several people, like they're afraid to get the COVID vaccine because they're going to get a bit of a flu and an arm ache, and you're driving yourself to get radiation. Good God, Helen.
Exactly. I had my first COVID vaccine on the weekend, and I just think I have had all sorts of poisons pumped into me.
Yeah.
So you can give me a COVID vaccine.
This can't do jack to you. And you didn't even get 5G like signaling within you. I mean,
I'm so disappointed.
I
They can't
know,
track
Helen.
me.
No, but thank you so much, Helen, for talking to me about this. And please tell my audience where they can find the C Word and your website, social media, everything, so they can hear your story through your words.
Yeah, so on Instagram, I'm the C_word_radio, and the C Word Radio on Facebook as well. I'll have to give you my website link.
That's all right. We've got enough now. We have enough to hear your stories, Helen. No, thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who heard my discussion with Helen. I hope that we can start a conversation where people can really begin to think less emotionally and more logically when they come face to face with the reality that cancer exists. And people who go through cancer are not necessarily people who are hopeless or broken, but they are people who are going through a very difficult struggle. And I think as a collective, we need to be there for everybody. It doesn't matter whether it's not just about cancer, about anything. But I think because we're focusing on cancer, that's one of those things that we need to be there for other people who are going through this thing, not just them, everybody around them who are impacted by it. So thank you so much for everybody who were watching on YouTube this episode, and everybody listening on my podcast. Take care of yourself, and may peace be on you all.